Some of the big projects that we're working on are Mistletoe Hall Farm. So that involves creating new lots for industrial projects. We're going to build a new road. We're going to have water and sewer and different utilities available to these lots. So I will work with my partners in Easton Utilities. They'll do the water and the sewer, the electric, fiber, gas, natural gas. They'll provide all those utilities, and I'll work on the road itself.
I see.
And then I'll also work on all the drainage. So all of the treating the stormwater runoff and then allowing that to release into the streams and into the bay. There's residential projects that they annex farms for residential projects around the outside of town, and one of the more recent ones is down at Easton Point at the end of Port Street. I think some people don't know that when you go to the end of Port Street down to the boat ramp, that from the parkway to the boat ramp is actually in the county, and recently a few parcels annexed into the town, and there's an overall vision to for that area to one day be all in the town of Easton.
Yeah.
And there's some plans, there's different groups that have put together plans for that peninsula at the end of Port Street. So it recently was in the annexation, the street recently changed, was dedicated from the county to the town. So I also work very closely with my colleagues at Talbot County, and but the road was a county road. The boat ramp is a county boat ramp. But when the annexation happened, the road transferred to the town of Easton. So the town of Easton now maintains that road, and we have plans to improve the road, widen it, put in sidewalks, put a rail trail down one side of it. The leading vision right now is to put a trail down to the boat ramp, and so I'll work on the road itself, and I'll work on the trail, the sidewalk, and then all the stormwater runoff associated with it. So the parkway is a state maintained road, and so the intersection there with the parkway will be coordinated with the State Highway Administration. For the road itself, we have town guidelines that are similar to other towns for how wide we use. There's federal guidelines on lane widths and parking, on-street parking, and sidewalk widths, and then there's ADA compliance for the sidewalk widths to make sure that wheelchairs can traverse the sidewalks and then cross the street. Crosswalks are ADA compliant, so there's federal guidelines that we follow for all of that design. And then our department also then inspects the construction. So we go from the design to the construction phase, and we inspect the construction and make sure that it complies with all of the design and all of the codes. One of the things that I work with regularly is requests from citizens to improve the bicycle traffic in town. We take pride in the fact that we feel that Easton's a very walkable town. There's a lot of people that are able to walk, especially in our downtown, and so our Rails to Trail system is another something we take pride in. That there's a lot of walkers, joggers, there's bicycles on the rail trail, and we're getting ready to do another trail that spurs off of the existing trail over near Maryland Avenue, and it's going to come through town, and it'll end up coming down to the boat ramp down Port Street. And so one of the things that we do want to encourage is people walking and also bicycles to travel down to the boat ramp on the rail trail. So we work with our planning and zoning department. We have a town planner, Lynn Thomas, who we work with him, and we are constantly trying to master plan for the whole town. And then we have to find money in our budget to fund these projects and then prioritize them. So Aurora Street, the example that you mentioned, was one that was tagged by the mayor. He said, I'd like to see Aurora Street improved. The road itself was in bad shape, and we said, well, while we're in there, we should improve the curb and gutter and the sidewalks. So we were able to get that work done, the curb and gutter and sidewalks, and we're getting ready this month to continue we went from Goldsboro to Creamery Lane, and we're going now from Creamery Lane down to Magnolia, and we're going to continue that sidewalk. We're going to fix the sidewalk that's there that's failing, and we're going to try to provide new sidewalk where there isn't any, and we're going to continue to expand that. We just have to take it in small steps, but we're going to see that this month, the start of the concrete work on Aurora Street, and then eventually we're going to put a new water main. Our partners at Easton Utilities are going to put a new water main in Aurora Street. When they're done with that, we're going to mill and overlay with asphalt the road. We have some traffic signals in the downtown, and we have the pedestrian crossings on them, and we're getting ready to do some more work on Harrison Street by Goldsboro Street, and that's something that we were discussing this week, was making sure that that's as pedestrian friendly, that intersection, when we do our paving and our curb and our sidewalk work, that we also look at making sure that it's as safe as possible for pedestrians to cross. So we'd prefer not to do diagonal crossings, but that's not to say that there's one that's not that's on a slight angle over where the farmers market is on Harrison Street, and that's one of the streets that we're getting ready to reconstruct. And so when we reconstruct it, that's one of the things that we're going to look at, is how to safely get people from the Brewers Lane side of Harrison Street by the new bank and get them across the street to the parking lot where the farmers market is. And we just want to make sure when we're redoing our sidewalks and our concrete curb in that area, that we provide the ramps in the right locations so that we can get people across the street as quickly as possible. So that's something that I've noticed recently as well. We've discussed it briefly, and it's something we would certainly consider. We want to make sure that fits with the town of Easton's character, but it is something that we're looking at. There's some areas where residents have concerns about people not seeing or ignoring stop signs at certain intersections in town, and so there's different ways to use LED lights to draw attention. The question is, does that fit with the character of the town of Easton? So that's something we're looking at. So the speed limits are they're decided at the state and federal level, and so there's certain standards that are out there to determine what the baseline speed limit should be. And then if we want to change that, we need to use a traffic study. So we would go to a specialist, a traffic engineer that specializes in traffic engineering, and they would do a study and they would determine what the speed limit should be. So there's some residents that would like to see the speed limits reduced to slow the vehicles down, but the way that we have to do it by law is to go to a traffic consultant, and they do their own study to see what the speed limit should be. So some of the roads are narrow, and it makes vehicles travel slowly, but when they're narrow and there's parking on the street, people complain that they get sideswiped, the mirrors get hit. It's just too narrow, and it's not safe. Vehicles will hit other vehicles, and then it's also hard. And so they would like to see wider roads. But then we have other parts of town where the roads are wide, and when they're wider, the vehicles do travel faster, and then we have people that would like to see us do things to slow the vehicles down. So I think there's a balance there. I think we're still trying to find what the right width is to make sure that cars can safely get by each other, but also aren't going to be traveling too fast. That's one of the things that we're looking at with Dover Street, with Goldsboro Street. The other one is Port Street and Glenwood. So those are two streets that come up from the west side of town from the Parkway. So Port Street gets pretty narrow in some points, and that's one of the routes, that is a route that the ambulances come to the hospital. So you'll see on-street parking there, and then if an ambulance is coming and you're traveling the other direction, somebody has to move over or you have to move over so the ambulance can get through. It's not simple because we don't want to tell people they can't park on the street, because a lot of the homes along the street, there's a lot of residences along the street, and so that is where they have to park, or that's where it's sensible to park anyway. And so that's where we would reach out to a consultant, a traffic engineer that would come in and do a study for us and tell us if a roundabout is appropriate for that intersection. And and I do travel around to see, there's the really small roundabouts for traffic calming, and then there's larger ones with major highways that come into the roundabouts. And so I think there's places where they're very effective. Easton, the right place for it, possibly, and we just have to figure out which streets would be most appropriate. Would be the smaller downtown area? Would it be some of the neighborhoods, or just trying to find the right spot for it and the right size? Is it one of the really small ones, or is it a larger roundabout? So we've had a lot of storm water related calls and concerns, and so that's when we talked earlier about prioritizing. I think that's one of the things that's probably the biggest challenge, is trying to prioritize all of the drainage problems we have in town. That we have a lot of old pipes that we're trying to systematically replace, and we can't replace them quick enough, but we're doing the best we can. And I think that's the thing that sometimes can be the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure all the citizens are happy as we can make them. But that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have. We have, with all the rain that we've had in the last year, we've had a lot of flooding issues in town. And so one of the things that we've realized is that some of the streams, that all of the roads, many of the roads, ultimately drain into our streams, and our streams drain down to the river, to tidal water at the river. But those streams, a lot of the streams need to be maintained or restored, is the term that we use. So they can be restored, and we can serve two functions. We can clean them and maintain them and restore them so that we can move the amount of rainwater through them, but we can also improve them and restore them so that we can create a better environmental benefit, so that we can provide we can provide better vegetation, but we can also provide habitat for different animals and wildlife in and around the streams. So we have recently partnered up with a bunch of our local groups to, again, they came to us with a vision. They said that we'd like to see some stream restoration. We knew that we had some flooding issues, and together we were able to put that together. We reached out for grant funding. We received a grant to do a design, and now we're in the process of asking for grant money to do the construction to restore some of the streams. Is that one of the things that we could do is, since much of that impervious area drains to the streams before it gets to the river, if we can restore the streams, we can treat the water most efficiently, because so much of that water is running to the streams. We're able to restore the streams and treat the runoff as it runs through the streams. So we have two that we have completed design on, and that we're asking for grant funds to construct. And then we have at least 3 more that around town that we would like to design. We are trying to find, we're going through our budget cycle right now for the next fiscal year budget, and it's something that we've been talking about, is putting money in our budget to design stream restoration so we can improve the flow of water through the streams and hopefully reduce the flooding effects, but also create all these great environmental benefits. The two that we recently completed design on, we began that process a little over a year ago. So it took some time to get the grant money lined up, and then it took some time to get a consultant. We advertised, we had a consultant come on board, and then they did the design, and it took them a few months to do the design. So the next step, those construction, if we're successful in our grant application, those construction dollars could be available late summer, and then we would then go and advertise to get a contractor to come in and do that work. And then it's going to be several months to get that construction completed. So those two streams are probably a year away. We've realized, and the State Highway Administration has realized, that there's a lot of people that live on the west side, the downtown side of Route 50, and they walk across Route 50 to the Walmart side, and they will do shopping and they'll come back. And so there's a lot of people that will cross, and there's no, that we need to improve, the state highway needs to improve the way that the pedestrian crossings occur. So what they're looking to do is they're looking to improve the median through the downtown part of Easton from Lomax Street all the way down to Dutchman's Lane, and they would like to improve the median. And we're working with State Highway and their consultants to see what that might look like. Does it look like the median that was recently done down in the Cambridge area? There's some others around the state where they've made it look more attractive with vegetation and with making the medians wider if they can, but they're also closing them so that people can't walk across the median. And so they're trying to encourage the crossings at Dover Street and Goldsboro Street. And so one of the things that's proposed in concept right now is to build a sidewalk along between Dover and Goldsboro Street, and then put pedestrian signals up so that pedestrians can cross at Goldsboro and Dover, so that we can concentrate the pedestrians to those two locations to make it as safe as possible. And then by closing the medians, we're also trying to make it so that there's not as many U-turns for vehicles. This is all being driven by the State Highway Administration. They've reached out to me in my role with the town to reach out to the citizens and the businesses along Route 50 to get their feedback on what the impacts would be to them for some of the businesses. And so that's one of the things I've also been working with the Chief of Police for Easton Police Department and his staff about some of what they see when they're doing their work, they're patrolling and looking at accident data, and to see what would be the safest way, and trying to balance the safety, also trying to make it look more attractive, but also trying to make sure that the businesses have that their customers can access their businesses as easily as possible. But